Thank you all very much. It is truly an honor for me to be standing here today to address you, our faculty, in the tradition of the convocation, and to address many of our staff members and members of the community, both here in New Jersey, as well as far beyond. It is a delight to really be able to have an opportunity to talk a little bit about what I think of in terms of our future, which I'm calling getting back to basics. I've been in this role now for fast approaching 9 months. And it's my first opportunity to actually address all of you collectively as one university faculty. Though I have done a great deal of listening and learning within our colleges, schools, departments, at the Faculty Senate, and across many areas of faculty, staff, and student life. I was fortunate to begin this role without a very steep learning curve as someone coming from outside the university, having been a member of the faculty here at FDU since 2003. And while I know a great deal about the institution, including its traditions and the valuable roles it plays within higher education and the ecosystem here in New Jersey, I also know what many of you do as well, that our industry faces a sobering reality that's thrust upon us by a confluence of many circumstances that seem to be coming together to create a perfect storm. This was clear prior to my stepping in the role. I still stepped in, and it's even clearer now. Taking a step back, however, much of my learning over the past months has actually allowed me a great deal of opportunity for reflection about our profession, the institution, and the fundamental role that both higher education and Fairleigh Dickinson play for our students and for our society. And I suspect that, like most of you, I didn't enter academia for the lure of salaries and signing bonuses, but rather because fundamentally, I suspect for most of us, we saw an opportunity to invoke a love and quest for learning that was in us, that was much the same way that we could invoke an experience for others. You all loved, like I do, the opportunity to be immersed into a culture of learning with the amazing opportunity that we all have to be truly forever young in mind and spirit when we set foot on a college campus to teach the next year's worth of incoming students and watch as their college experience unfolds, much the way it takes us back to our own academic journey. For me, this has true resonance because my own academic journey began here at FDU. But the notion of a college campus as a bastion for higher level thinking and the pursuit of knowledge harkens many of us back to the days of coming to our campus ourselves, books in hand, ready to engage attentively and hold on every word that a professor spoke, to highlight every passage that was in a notebook or in a reading, and to be able to distill, study, and if many of you were like me, to tab and file and organize notes to be able to hone in on what you were learning and get ready for that next exam or paper. And I suspect that for many of you, this passion stemmed much further back than your first day of college, back to high school, middle school, elementary school, or in some cases even before. I know my own family would lament the days that I would have an incessant love of office supplies and organization, even long before I ever needed to set foot inside a Staples to buy a binder or a file folder. I suspect many of you lament that similar journey of your walk as well. Each of you, I suspect, also had stories of your youth where you were diligently focused on learning and becoming a student long before you ever carried that title in an official role. It is truly, more often than not, the personality profile of the academic. I suspect that all of us envisioned our role of professor much to be like we see in the movies or portrayed in the way as being the sage on the stage, talking to a quested for love young people who were listening and thirsting for knowledge and hanging on every word we said. This vision, which we often see portrayed in the idyllic sense, comes with students well prepared and ready to learn, engage, and grow. And it comes with the sole purpose of them hanging on every word, fully vested into the ideal that hanging their hat on a college experience was for the purpose of enriching their academic journey through the knowledge we provided. The idealized perspective of higher education is both familiar and alluring, with it likely being the scenario for much of our undergraduate and graduate journey ourselves, while often serving as the depiction of the higher education that we've seen portrayed throughout recent history. For a generation, the populace sought out college campuses as a place for true advancement, both of ideals, careers, and opportunities, and we as the academy were portrayed as steadfast purveyors of both knowledge and opportunity. However, it's no secret that the tides have turned, and in some respects, they've turned both quickly and drastically. The question of the value of higher education is now front and center around almost every discussion at dinner tables of families of prospective students, at the highest levels of government and public discourse, and seemingly overnight, the narrative has shifted away from a college education as being a gateway to the future of opportunity, and has reversed course to now being what's often portrayed as an overpriced credential that's non-differentiable and in some cases not necessary. Recent articles over the past few months, many that I've probably sent to all of you, talk about employers doing things like removing the college degree required statement from their job postings. And instead, high-profile employers of choice have begun shifting the narrative towards seeking employees who are, quote unquote, still skill credentialed. That can include through badges, certificates, or other demonstrable evidence of their achievements around certain deliverables. And lest we believe that the debate is foundationally about cost in and of itself, community colleges across the state are also emptying out. This in spite of the fact that tuition levels for many of the students packaged with aid and other grants actually make this education free. Double-digit enrollment drops year over year have been the norm for two-year institutions. And actually, in speaking recently and visiting several community colleges and speaking with their presidents, one quote unquote says, you can't give the product away. Clearly, the winds have changed. And if this were the only challenge facing our industry, we would have our work cut out for us. But I hate to tell you that there are other stark realities that lie ahead. The enrollment cliff that we've long referred to, but often thought of as the headlights in the distance, is coming upon us with significance. I'm sure you've all heard this discussion about decreased numbers of students coming through the K-12 educational system as a result of decreasing birth rates during the Great Recession of 2007, 2008. This generation soon begins to age out to college and showcases a nearly 20% decrease in students of college age for our region, with many counties in New Jersey observing that greater than 1 out of every 5 seats currently in high schools are unfilled over the past 10-year comparator period within our state's high school system. Exacerbating this problem is an exodus of population from our area as people begin to work from anywhere and pursue places to live beyond the tri-state area. We begin to see people reassessing priorities and migrating out of these very high density and high cost areas that we reside in, with New Jersey being one of the top 3 states for population decrease during the past several years. And that creates a significant additional challenge regarding numbers of college-age students available for enrollment within our institutions within both the state and the region. Much of this reality was forthcoming, and much of it's been forecasted and predicted for years. What could never have been prognosticated was the realities of what COVID and our COVID response has done to our young people. We have sadly taken 3 years of academic, social, emotional, and behavioral development and provided an alternative that was often inadequate, insufficient, and in some cases terribly destructive. We've taken a socioeconomic, racial, and ethnic gap and blown it wide open as a society, with students of means having access to resources and support that students of lesser means had no access to. Staggering numbers of students have simply disappeared from the education system, with disproportionate effects observed within populations that are most disadvantaged and the need of the support that a school environment can provide. And of grave concern in the reality facing young people is what we see regarding their development. A student of age 18 is emotionally, socially, and academically like a 15-year-old. Additionally, the already significant mental health challenges facing this generation have now become a perfect storm of anxiety, depression, and staggering numbers of students in crisis. Recent statistics suggest that 1 out of every 4 adolescents experienced suicidal ideation, greater than 1 out of every 2 experienced a major depressive episode over the past 2 years, and a staggering number of young people are now on medications to treat anxiety and depression. Additionally, there are academic and learning gaps that suggest students academically adrift. State scores for reading, math, and writing suggest in some cases a 2+ year delay for progress in students. And it seems that much of the solution has been to stop testing and assessing just so we don't learn how bad the situation is. So the goal in all of this is not to create a bleak picture and start the academic year with no hope, but rather for us to set a path forward grounded in reality, but focused on the challenges we face, in the full hope that we truly see the opportunities ahead to carve out our place as an institution amidst the fires that burn within our industry. We need to stop asking some questions. We need to start asking others. We need to stop asking the question, are students college ready? We need to start asking the question, are colleges student ready? Equally important, we need to change our aspirations institutionally from being the university we went to and be the university that values the principles on which we were founded, to provide opportunity by meeting learners where they are, transforming their lives with the personalized experiences that develop them, and provide them the opportunity to see and experience a world beyond their own, opening doors to opportunities for upward social mobility that they would never have achieved but for their experiences here at Fairleigh Dickinson University. I can assure you it will require a change of mindset. We need to change our ways and perspectives from looking at the different ways that students don't belong in college and start to think about the ways that we can help them find their path along this journey. We need to change our perspectives from being punitive to being developmental, and we need to adapt our products and our services across every area to understand the stories, the fears, the barriers, and the journeys of our students, and realize that if we are truly going to meet them where they are, we have to first find out the path that they've taken to get here. We need to understand that the traditional student is no more, for even the path of a traditional age student is now very non-traditional, and the world now requires a focal shift to a mindset of lifelong learning. For many of us, myself included, it means letting go of something we've revered about the academic journey, usually our own as a point of reference, and growing and changing our mindset for a new day, a new generation, and a new world that desperately needs us. For those of you that know me, you may know that I pride myself first and foremost on being a parent. And parenting has taught me a great deal about life, which I try and draw as parallels between raising children and the many other aspects of life. I remember someone sharing a poem some time ago about raising differently abled children and talking about generally what happens when you lose your vision for what your children's paths look like and they differ from what you believe, hope, or dream they should be. And it strikes a chord, I suspect, for many of you, both in personal and professional life, as you see your own children or your own family or friends' children beginning to take a different direction, moving towards a different identity from what you might have envisioned it to be. In many cases, it means that you have things different, but in some cases, it means mourning that difference and then seeing an opportunity to love and embrace the new thing nonetheless. I believe that this change of view is paramount to our future. A new day has come, and it's come quicker than any of us could have likely thought or hoped. The pandemic has taken 20 years of evolution, and it's accelerated it to 20 months worth of time. To survive and to thrive and to grow in the current landscape, we must change. Our institution must look different, it must act different, and it must value different things, because higher education will look different, and it is our only reality to be on the path leading the way forward. I can say few things with absolute certainty, but I will say this. When Fairleigh Dickinson University is to persevere and be a viable institution moving forward, things will change and we will have become more nimble and more streamlined. There needs to be a lot of introspection into what we are, into our core mission, and how that mission aligns with the needs of our learners and our society to determine a path forward. But I say this to encourage you. There is more than a welcoming place for Fairleigh Dickinson University, even amidst a tumultuous and dramatic shrinking of the higher education footprint in this country. There is a place for us largely because our institution was founded on principles and ideals that are perhaps more relevant now, 80 years from the beginning of our institutional story, than when they were founded on day one. We have always been, from our inception, founded on transforming lives, changing futures, and realizing dreams for students who needed opportunity brought to them. And for all of you, our faculty, our staff, our students, and anyone who's a member of this community, there is a place for each of you to be the very thing that students of today and tomorrow need and can't do without. As the knowledge economy completely changes, there's a great deal of instant access to facts and information, making much of what we do, or used to do, less relevant to the day-to-day educational experience. However, our faculty's place in this new space is to be curators of knowledge, to be the stewards and navigators of our learners, and to be the ones that teach them how to critically think, engage them as mentors and guideposts, and to support them through the journey, the struggles, and the obstacles that this educational path will bring. As I hearken back to my own undergraduate student experience at FDU 25 years ago, all of my impactful memories and transformational experiences were not the result of bricks and mortar, not the result of flashy courses and offerings, but were truly relational with the people and relationships that I built that changed the course of who I was. 5 weeks into my first semester of freshman year, I was engaged by Professor Frank Lang, professor of chemistry at Florham, who asked me on a whim to participate in a research project with him. I changed my major, found my calling and passion, and never looked back. I was mentored throughout my journey by people who cared about me, my story, and my success. It was actually a staggering and stark contrast to my graduate experience when I went on to complete it at Princeton, where I was a first-year graduate student, and I would often joke that I would learn it on Monday and teach it on Tuesday. And the students who had access to me, the 22-year-old trying to figure it all out himself, had no or little direct access to faculty members, no real support or mentoring, but rather a reliance on their own intellect to help them navigate their own path. I often say that it's relatively easy to produce good outcomes for every student when you take the class valedictorian from every high school in America and take on the role of educating them. Our institutional calling to educate and guide students who truly need us to help them in navigating a path forward towards success is a greater, more authentic, and more important institutional calling. As everything changes, go ahead, applaud for me. As everything changes and students become less and less prepared and ready to navigate their own journey, they will need an academic, social, and emotional support to keep them on path when everything seems simply too big to overcome. This is where we shine. This is what we do because it's what we've always done. It's our institution's legacy. It will be our greatest asset, and it will be the very story that we tell to students when we tell them that you belong here at Fairleigh Dickinson University. At a time when everything is changing, the need for support, guidance, and an educational mentor willing to take students on an academic journey is alive, well, and more needed than ever. And it's the core of our institutional history. During my first few months, I've been doing a lot of reading, and one thing I came across during my time was a speech that I found remarkably interesting. I found a published speech that seems particularly relevant, titled "The Dangers That Face American Colleges and Universities." And it goes on to list these concerns in sequence. Institutions are getting too large and complex. Empire building. Entering an era of super deluxe building and construction programs. A lessening on the emphasis of good teaching. Too many groups legislating colleges and universities. Too much turnover. The cost of higher education is sky high. And finally, in spite of more money being spent per student, the college student is becoming more uncontrolled in personal life than ever before. The author of this speech then goes to speak about the design of a new model for a university being created, one that changed the focus and view of just what a university can and should be. He says, people think of a university in terms of buildings, numbers of students, or complexity of curricula. And yet it is in terms of service to the students that we find the greatest meaning to our lives. This service, we feel, is by far the most important aspect of our institution. This is the magic web that holds it together and gives us the elan that is the spirit of the institution. So I ask you, does that sound relevant? Does it sound contemporary? And does it sound exciting? It sounds to me like it could have been written last week, but it wasn't. It was authored by Peter Sammartino, the founder of our institution, during a speech in the early 1950s as he spoke about the challenges facing higher education and the mission of Fairleigh Dickinson University to overcome these challenges. This vision was relevant then, and I would argue it is perhaps more than ever relevant now. It is the core identity on which we were founded, and it is the core message of our founder himself. So as we look to the future, maybe it's also time for us to look to the past. And maybe, just maybe, our successes can be found as we get back to basics. I look forward to taking this journey with all of you. I'm not going to tell you it will be easy. I'm not going to tell you it will always be agreeable, but I am truly excited for what lies ahead. I know that famous author John Maxwell once said, "Change is inevitable and growth is optional." And I ask for you to all join me on a path ahead where we change and grow together for the betterment of our institution, our students, and our future. I look forward to taking this journey with all of you. I thank you for your time today, and I thank you for being partners on this journey that lies ahead. And now as we turn our attention to recognizing the examples of the day-to-day that we have here that makes us truly an institution that is transformational, both for our students and for our community, we're going to turn our attention to recognizing our faculty and staff, first starting with the presentation of the recipients of the 2022 Distinguished Faculty Awards, who are being honored for their excellence and their outstanding contributions to the university. And I would first like to ask Benjamin Rifkin, Dean of Maxwell Becton College of Arts and Sciences, to present our first award.